everyone. Welcome to Brown Girls Happy Hour, where two brown girls make cocktails and mocktails, and we also get guests on our show to discuss their book, their journey, and their inspiration with us. Today, we have with us Poornima Manco, and she's the author of the book A Quiet Dissonance, and we are so excited to meet her and discuss her book with her. Hi, Poornima. How are you?
Hi, Khyati. Hi, Daman. I'm so happy to be on here. As I told you before the meeting, I've been listening to your podcast for quite a while, and I think you both do a wonderful job highlighting South Asian authors, some great books, some very thought-provoking conversations. So very excited to be on today. Thank you.
Thanks, Poornima. Thanks for your kind words. It means a lot to us.
Yeah, it's always so good.
Oh, I mean them.
Thank you.
Before we get into our conversation and know more about Poornima, let's make our cocktail first.
Yes.
Yes, of course. I've got all my ingredients handy.
So we are making a rum cocktail. So you need like a glass of sorts with some ice in it. And then
I've got my cocktail shaker. I've got my rum.
About 2 ounces of rum. And 1 ounce of lemon juice. And about ½ ounce of simple syrup. That's it.
Okay, goes the lemon juice.
Then you can either shake it or stir it. I
Yeah.
decided to do this, which is not so fun. I like shaker more, I think.
By the way, I I don't know if your guests know this, but I must apologize for making you drink in the middle of the afternoon because I think it's only 2 o'clock where you are. It's 10 o'clock. Mine is shaken.
Never apologize for that, Poornima.
I know that's true because you know what I thought. Okay, it's a weekend. It's a Saturday. You're allowed to drink in the day.
Yes,
so it's fine.
Yeah, any
Can't
opportunity
wait to try this cocktail out.
Then we just strain it to like any glass that you want.
I know you're girls after my own heart. You really are girls after my own heart because I love cocktails. So here we go. Ready?
All right. Yes, we are ready. Kathy, are you ready?
Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, that's lovely.
Wow.
Yeah.
What have you called this cocktail, by the way? What have you named it?
So we name our cocktails after the inspiration, which you chose Audrey Hepburn. So this is the Audrey Hepburn. Yes.
Fantastic. That's lovely. Here's to Audrey Hepburn.
And that's a great segue to Audrey Hepburn. So tell us, of course, Audrey Hepburn is a feminist icon, like a great, amazing actress as well. So yeah, tell us, why did you choose Audrey Hepburn? I mean, yeah, there doesn't have to be
I think there's a lot of beautiful actresses. I mean, we've had them in Hollywood and Bollywood. And by the way, I've grown up in India, so I'm a huge Bollywood fan as well. But there's something about Audrey Hepburn. I think there's like an innate elegance to her. There's that, and I think with what really attracts me to Audrey Hepburn's aura and persona is the fact that she was such a good person. And I think that goodness was reflected in her face. And of course, I mean, she did a lot of charity in her lifetime. And there was an innocence and a purity to her, which I haven't really seen in anyone else. So in fact, I mean, ironically, I have a little shrine to Audrey Hepburn in my house. So as you go up the stairs, on the landing, I've got this beautiful old film poster of hers from Sabrina, where she's wearing a beautiful Givenchy dress. I've got a few books that I've picked up on her life. So I really am an enormous fan. I love her a lot. So yeah, so here's to Audrey Hepburn again.
Here's to Audrey Hepburn. That's amazing. And so let's get to you now. Tell us about your journey as an author. Like, what made you write?
Right. I think I've always written, and I'm sure when you've interviewed other writers, other authors, they've all pretty much said the same thing, that you have the spark right from the start where you want to write and you want to I mean, of course, you don't at the time when you start to write, or certainly when I started to write, I didn't think about it as a way of making sense of the world. Today I do, because that's what writing is to me. It's sort of catharsis, and it's about making sense of life. But when I first started out, when I was a very young girl growing up in Delhi, um, I used to write because I wanted to tell stories and I wanted to entertain people around me, And I was a very imaginative child, an only child. So a lot of my time was spent with books. And I think that hyperactive imagination was channeled into writing by my mom. Um, and while I was growing up in Delhi, we used to have, back in the day, Times of India had a newspaper supplement for kids in schools called Newspaper in Education. And I used to write for them. So every month they would have a competition, and every month I would send in a story because that was just like fun for me. And I'd win. I mean, I'd either be first or second or third or whatever. So much so that my classmates started making fun of me, and they said, "Do you have an uncle who works for Times of India that you're getting all these prizes?" you know? And in fact, funnily enough, about 2 or 3 years ago, I went back home to Delhi, and I went through all my old stuff, and I found all those old newspapers, and I brought them back to show to my girls and say, "Look, mummy wasn't lying. I really did used to write, and this used to be published." And then somewhere along the way, I sort of lost my way, in the sense I stopped writing. I went into a different career, and that carried on for a long, long time. I didn't write. Then in 2009, one of my best friends sent me a link, and she said the Guardian newspaper in the UK had a competition. And she said, "I remember from school days, you loved writing. Why don't you just send in a story? Come on, what's the harm?" And I thought, okay, fine, I'll send in a story. So I sat and wrote the story, and I sent it off. Didn't expect anything to happen. About 3 months later, I get this email, and it says that, I mean, although my story didn't come first or second or whatever, but it was one of the finalists. And that somehow, something inside of me ignited. And I thought, I really want to do this. I want to do this. So I went back into writing, and I would just write short stories, and I'd put them up on Facebook, and people would read and people would comment, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, great, 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 love this, love this." Then I started writing for competitions, and a few of my stories placed in the Telegraph, in the Guardian. And at that time, I hadn't heard of this movement called indie publishing. I don't think that I mean, it had just sort of started. It was very nascent. But I remember a school friend writing to me and saying, "Oh, a niece of mine is very interested in writing. Can you give her some tips?" So this young girl, she must have been in her early 20s, wrote to me and said, "What can you tell me?" At the time, I was already blogging. And I said, "Well, all I can say to you is write what's in your heart. Don't try and copy anyone else. Don't try to do what other people are doing. Because if you do, that's just fraudulent. That's not you. Write what's in your heart." Well, lo and behold, about 6 months later, she comes out with a book. And I thought, wow, how did she come out? For me, in my mind, because I'm from that generation where, you believe you've got to run after an agent, you've got to find a publisher. And I didn't have the time for that. I have a family, have another job. And I was thinking, I don't have the time for all this. Then this girl came out with the book, and she said to me, "I've self-published it." And I thought, self-published, because self-publishing had this whiff of vanity publishing. And I thought, oh no, I mean, that's not something I want to do. I mean, I'm far above all that. But slowly, I started to understand that this was a different movement. Indie publishing was a different movement. And the difference is very simple. It is, while you're a writer and you're writing the book. Once you finish writing the book, you effectively take off that hat, the writer's hat, and you put on the publisher's hat. So you do everything that a traditional writer would do, which is you get it edited by a professional editor. You get a professional cover put on it. You get feedback. You upload it to websites where they have reviewers who can destroy your book, who can say, this is utter rubbish, if they really choose to do that. So when I started to understand all of that, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe there is a market out there for my book. And my at the time, I was writing short stories. So I came out with a book of short stories, which was Parvati's Well and other stories, all set in India. And all these stories were, because I was just dipping my toe into the waters, you see, just to see what it was about. And these are stories I selected because they'd all placed in different competitions. So I thought, they've obviously there's a standard there. People have liked these stories. Judges have liked them. So hopefully, the general public will like it as well. And that book did pretty well. And from there, it was just a bug that got a hold of me. So I've written the India trilogy, so it was Parvati's Well, which was a really thin book, 6 stories. Then I wrote Damage, which was a very dark book, which had lots of stories which were very true to life stories and things that were happening in India and politically. And, there was the Nirbhaya case, which I also sort of had in a story. There was a case about, where this young Muslim man was burnt. I don't know if you remember on Twitter, they had it all over Twitter where he was burnt alive because he happened to fall in love with a Hindu girl. So I fictionalized these accounts, but I really wanted to write about the underbelly of what was happening in India and Indian society. But as all of us know, India is not just doom and gloom and darkness and despair and prejudice. There's also a lot of beauty and culture and vibrance and all the wonderful things that we enjoy as Indians and we have a lot of respect and regard for. So my third book in the trilogy was a happy book, and that was Holy Moly and Other Stories, and that was the book that rounded off the trilogy. So it went from dark to darker to light and happy. So that was my short story journey. And then I wrote a novella, which was also set in India. And then Acquired Dissonance is about an Indian woman who's moved to England and her life. And I've written another book of short stories, which is stories set all over the world. So now I'm working on another book of short stories. That's my journey. God, I've talked so much.
That's quite a journey with like so many writings in there.
Yeah, but I love it. I
would also like to, read your Times of India short stories that you wrote.
God, it's so embarrassing now because when I look back, I think I was what, 16, 17 when I was writing them, so they're a little bit on the childish side. But I look back and I think obviously there was a spark even back then that I wanted to write. And the more you write, the better you get. So obviously at my age now, when I look back, I think, oh, cringe.
So since you write a lot, Poornima, do you like follow a routine? Do you have like a schedule you follow for your writings, or you go with the flow?
Daman, I used to be one of those people who used to think I'll only write when the muse comes to me. And the muse may not have come for months on end. And then I realized that is all complete rubbish. What you have to do is you have to sit down and you have to write. And there are days when the muse will turn up, and there are days when the muse won't turn up, and you write utter rubbish, but you're writing. And it's one of those things where the more you do something, the more you practice, the better you get. So now it's more a force of habit where I sit down and I say, okay, I'm going to write 1,000 words a day. I don't care whether they're good or bad, because this can be scrapped later, it can be edited later, but you can't edit a blank page, as they say, So I sit and do it regardless. So that's my routine, 1,000 words every day.
Wow,
that's amazing.
Every day is amazing. That's amazing.
No, I know
just
people
every
who write
part is amazing to me. I feel like I don't stick to anything long term. I feel like, okay, I'm bored now. I need to switch up the routine. So the fact that you can do something day in, day out.
That's also good, because when you switch up the routine, you're actually making your brain function in different ways. So I think creatively you bring a lot more to the table as well. I think routine it's like the death of creativity, isn't it? So in some ways, I think you have to marry both things, a little bit of routine and a little bit of erratic stuff in there.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So Poornima, tell us a little bit about Quiet Dissonance. So like how did you, what is the inspiration behind the main characters, and how did you?
So When I moved to the UK, it's nearly, I think, 25 years now, 25 years ago, yeah. When I moved here, I lived in a very Indian area to begin with, because that's all we knew, and I just moved to an area called Southall. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a very Indian area in London. And I was surrounded by a lot of Indians, but I didn't feel one of them because I had just sort of come from Delhi. And I think what had happened back then, and probably still happens in a lot of countries, even here, is that people who've moved from a certain generation and a certain era, like the 60s, they've kind of got those values from the 60s. Now, I moved here in the 90s. So for me, my India was very different from their India, you know? So there was already at that point a little bit of dissonance there because I wasn't understanding where they were coming. They were lovely. They were really kind and lovely and gentle and wonderful people, but there was already a dissonance. Then, I met my husband, we got married, then we moved to a primarily English area. And again, now I thought somebody like me who was pretty westernized, spoke the language well, I'd be fine in a purely English environment. But there was a dissonance there as well because you see, they were coming from a different place and I was coming from a different place. So all along, this was playing in my mind, and I was thinking, is this the migrant experience? Where you move to another country and you think you will fit in with your own people, but somehow you don't. And then you think you'll fit in with the people from that land, and somehow you don't. So where do you find your footing? How do you identify with with people? I mean, how do you fit in? So for me, that was the start of a quiet dissonance. And then, I mean, obviously, I wasn't exactly friendless. I'm not that horrible a person. So I ended up making friends and making friends amongst the Indians and amongst the English, and understanding that there are all kinds of people in every culture and every country. But then I started talking to them and asking their viewpoints. And over a period of time, I gathered all these different experiences, and I thought, I'm going to write a book. So I wrote a book about this lady called Anu who moved to England. She's married, she's got a daughter, and they moved to a new area. And she thinks, great, my daughter's starting school, so I'm going to make friends with all the school moms. But she starts off on the wrong foot, and she doesn't quite understand what's going on with her, why she's not able to get along with these people. And all along, she's got some people who are actually extending a hand of friendship, but she's not interested in them. We always run after stuff that we can't get, whereas the stuff that's right then, right in front of us, we're not interested in that because it's
Yeah.
too easy, right? So that's her journey. So she has to find out who her real friends are, who the fake friends are. And she also has to understand through the book what she's about. Who is she? Is her identity only that of a wife and a mother? Or is there something more to her? And if there is something more to her, how does she find that? So that's the whole thing. And it's very much categorized as women's fiction, which I don't mind because I love women's fiction. I am a woman. I read a lot of women's fiction. So I remember one of the criticisms that a reviewer said was, well, nothing much happens in the book. Well, no, nothing much does happen. I mean, nobody is murdered. It's not a murder mystery, but it's a journey. It's a journey, and it's this girl's journey, a young woman's journey. Actually, she's in her 30s, and how she discovers at the end that true happiness really lies in accepting yourself for who you are and what you are. And the moment you accept yourself, and the moment you stop trying to fit into other people's ideas of what is right, that's the day you discover your happiness. So that's what it was about. And yeah, that was my first novel.
That is amazing. And the message, and also I feel like a lot of the immigrants are going to relate to it so much because this is what our
I hope
journey
so.
has been, right? Yeah, like
It
just
really is. I mean, you both of you girls, both of you girls are immigrants, aren't you? And I think I've also heard you all speak in your different podcasts about how sometimes it can be tricky. It can be tricky finding your feet It can be lonely, very lonely. Nobody ever talks about that, because when you're in India, it's always seen as this wonderful dream. Wow, you've moved abroad, you've got the life. Nobody talks about the loneliness.
Right.
Yeah,
Of
it's
trying to
all
find
about
your
how many dollars you're making, right? Nobody's talking about the other stuff.
Exactly. But I mean, you could be financially doing fantastically well, but emotionally, it takes a toll on you. And it's only through time and life and experience and finding other people and finding your tribe. It's very much about finding your tribe. And when you do, then you discover what happiness really is. I mean, as much as one can be happy in this life, you know.
And
Definitely.
Poornima, you mentioned that you read a lot of books. So I'm curious, what are your current reads or top recommendations?
So I like to do this in this way. I read one really heavy book, a serious book. Then I'll read a really funny book. Then I'll read a nonfiction book. Then I'll go back to a serious book. So I've just finished with my serious book. I'm still kind of on this nonfiction book that's been going on for a very long time. It's sitting by my bedside, and I pick it up now and again. But the serious book I finished was called In the Midst of Winter by Isabel Allende. I don't know if you know her. She is a Chilean writer, Chilean American writer, very well regarded actually in America. First book I read of hers, and I was blown away. I mean, oh, the writing, incredible, so beautiful. And I closed this book because it's a story of immigrants. It's a story of refugees. It's about a Guatemalan girl. It's about a Brazilian, a man actually who was married to a Brazilian woman and a Chilean woman. And it talks about their personal histories and the tragedies. But when you finish the book, you don't finish it with a sense of deep sadness. You actually finish it with this very life affirming belief that, no matter what happens in life, you don't know what's around the corner. There could be happiness around the corner. And that's what I found so wonderful. I finished it last night, and as I closed it, I thought, I need to go and search out other books by this lady because she's an amazing writer. So a very big recommendation from me. Pick it up if you can.
Thank you. That sounds very interesting. I'm definitely picking it up. It's amazing. Thanks. And so what are your favorite reading genre? Like, you mentioned that you read like different kinds of books, but what are you actually reading the most?
A lot of literary fiction. I'm definitely a literary fiction girl. And, whenever I read a beautifully written, because for me, it's not just about the story. Of course, story is very important. If you don't have a story or a plot, then, you might as well say goodbye to your reader. But for me, it's also the beauty of the language, how well it's used. And I love discovering new words. I'll read something and it'll come up, and I normally read on my Kindle, and it comes up with this word which I've never heard before. And I'm like, another one to add to my dictionary. So I'll quickly check the word, And I just find it amazing how writers can use words to describe things, to describe lands that you have never been to. I've never been to Guatemala, but the way she described the country, the way she described what's going on there, I felt like I was there. And that's the beauty of it. I mean, that's why they call reading armchair traveling, because, you could be sitting anywhere and you could travel the world. So for me, literary fiction is definitely a genre I enjoy very much. Women's fiction, also very close to my heart. And then I'll read anything else. I mean, I'll read chick lit. I'm not a snob. Okay, much as I love literary fiction, I am not a snob. I will pick up anything as long as it's well written. If it's not written well, that's it. Goodbye. I don't want to know. But so the next book that's on my Kindle is a comedy. It's like a Sophie Kinsella or something like that, which is great. It's a palate cleanser for me. I've read a heavy book. I'm going to read something funny and light that will keep me in a happy mood. And so I'm quite Catholic in my taste. I read just about anything.
That's great. That's actually great to hear, because I think my reading patterns are also similar. Like, I'll read a very heavy book, then I'll read a lighter book, and then I'll read a non-fiction. So it's I love that. Yeah.
And Poornima, going back to where we started,
Yeah.
I was saying, going back to where we started, um, you said you also are very much like us. You love cocktails. So I want to know, what are your favorite cocktails?
Oh, okay. So my favorite cocktail is a lychee martini. Oh my God, I love it. Absolutely love it. Have you tried it?
No,
No, I
Have you drunk
haven't.
a lychee martini? Oh my God, girls, you've got to try this. Okay, find the nearest bar. Find the nearest bar and go get yourself a lychee
But
martini. They are
that's
so
just a
different.
house
Okay,
for us right now.
we call them lychee in India, right? But they call them
Yeah.
lychee here.
uh,
But oh, it's a vodka-based martini, and with the lychee juice, and they put the lychee in it, and I think it's got a bit of vermouth in it. It's absolutely delicious. So lychee martini number one, apple martini number two. That's my second. Anything that's got that sweet and sour khata mitha taste,
right.
I love that. I love that. So
You have
yeah,
to,
I'm a big cocktail girl.
yeah.
Yeah.
Daman, you
Yeah.
have to,
I'm just curious, where can I find it?
yeah,
Oh,
right.
see, write it down. Lychee martini, apple martini. Try both. Don't get drunk, but try them.
No promises, Poornima.
That's fine. It's a Saturday. You're allowed. You can have a lion tomorrow.
So, Poornima, before we end this, do you have a message for our listeners, or actually our viewers?
So, yeah, I do actually. So, if anybody's interested in reading about me or about my stories, just visit my website, which is poornimamanco.com. There's also a free story on there, and it's unlike most of my writings, which are about India. This is a story that's set in Russia, and it's very much in the in the sort of genre of Russian writing, Russian writers, and it's kind of dark, but it's called Abeyance. Um, because I don't just write about India, I also write about the world, because I think, there's a universality to our experiences and to our feelings. I mean, we're all humans. We have the same emotions. We laugh, we cry, we love, we hate, all of that. So a lot of my stories are set around the world. And this is like an example of a story that is set in Russia. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's a free story. So anybody can go on there and just click on the link. It will take you to the story. It's called The Bayans. And I hope you enjoy reading it. And I hope you'll, maybe go out and check out some of my other books. And maybe you girls, once you've read, if you ever get around to reading Acquired Dissonance, you can let me know what you think about it as well. I'd love to know.
Definitely. I am so interested. I mean, actually, I'm also interested in reading your short stories, like you talked about.
Yeah, I mean, that may be a good, but let me warn you because, some of my colleagues, when they read the first book, Parvati's Well, they were like a little bit like, oh my God, you wrote that? Because I'm always laughing and joking and those stories are very dark. They're very dark. And they're like, what? Are you a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde character? Where did this darkness come from? So I'm warning you. Parvati's Well is very dark. So if you're not into dark stuff, then read Holy Moly. They're all standalone, so you don't have to read them in any order. So if you want to read a happy book, then Holy Moly is the one. If you want to read a dark book, Parvati's Well. If you want to read a really dark book, and you want to get depressed and go and sit in a room for 5 hours and cover your head with a quilt, Damage. Damage is the book.
Thanks for the warning, Poornima. We'll pick according to the moods.
You do that, yeah.
And what is your next book called? And when is it coming out?
So the next book I'm hoping will come out by the end of September. It's actually at my editor's right now, and she's just started the first round of edits. My editor actually lives in Bangalore, so it's fantastic because she's got that Indian background, so she understands. Because I use a lot of Indian words, I use a lot of Hindi in my writing, and so she understands all of that. But this book actually is it's a sequel to my other book, which was 12 Stories from Around the World, and this one is called Eight Fantastical Tales from Here, There, and Everywhere. So again, this is going to be another series of books, and in this one, the stories are all set all around the world, but there's like a fantastical element to it. So you won't see it coming, but something strange will happen. Um, I'll give you a little example. There's one story that's set in India, and it's in a halwai's shop. Okay, and he's a halwai, and his name is Lala Lakshmi. And one day, just before Diwali, suddenly he's visited by Mata Lakshmi. So there's a lot of confusion because he himself is Lala Lakshmi and then Mata Lakshmi is coming to see him. And it's kind of like a bizarre, thing that happens to him. But it changes his life. It changes his life. So all of the stories have something that is like a little bit out of, not little, quite a bit out of the ordinary, a bizarre element to it. So, but the stories are all grounded in reality. They're all happening in this world, but just with this element. So yeah, so this should be hopefully releasing end of September, early October. Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay. I'm ready to read it. So hopefully it comes out sooner.
Yeah, and good luck with the book, Poornima, and thank you so much for joining us today. It was great talking to you.
It was lovely talking to the both of you, and keep doing the great job that the both of you are doing. Fly that flag high.
Thank you. Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.